Good evening, America. Tonight, something happened that 100 days ago would have been unimaginable. Donald Trump, the president who launched a war to destroy Iran's military capability, who bombed Iran's missile sites for months, who said Iran's threat to the world had to end, stood in front of the world this week and defended Iran's right to keep some of its ballistic missiles. His own vice president went to the White House podium and explained why. And in that same briefing, Vice President J.D. Vance turned his fire not on Iran, but on Israel's own government. He said Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. He said the problem for Israel is not Donald Trump, and anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the president of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in. The Vice President of the United States stood at the White House podium and told members of an Israeli cabinet by name that they were wrong about who their real friends are. Tonight, we are going to break down every single piece of this: the missile defense, the warning to Netanyahu, Khamenei's written response, and what this all means for an alliance that started this war together and is now publicly fracturing in front of the entire world. Stay with me, because tonight reveals more about where this war is actually heading than anything else has in 111 days. Let us start with the most stunning development, because Trump defending Iran's missile program is a reversal so significant it deserves to be understood in full context before anything else. Vice President J.D. Vance, in a press briefing following Trump's signing of the Iran agreement, defended the president's assertion that Iran should be allowed to keep some of its ballistic missiles. Vance said, and these are his exact words, "They are not going to be able to build the kind of missiles that can broadly threaten the entire world." And that's what the President of the United States said yesterday. Read that carefully. Trump is not saying Iran will have zero missiles. He is saying Iran will not be able to build missiles capable of broadly threatening the entire world, which is a meaningfully different and much lower bar. Iran can apparently keep missiles that threaten the region. It just cannot build the kind that threaten everywhere on Earth. That distinction, drawn by the President of the United States and defended by his own vice president in front of reporters, represents one of the most significant walkbacks of America's stated war goals in the entire conflict. Remember what this war was supposed to accomplish. Trump said in early March that Iran's unconditional surrender was the only acceptable outcome. He said Iran's nuclear program had to be destroyed. He said no money until further notice. He said Iran would relinquish its enriched uranium one way or another. None of those original demands required Iran to keep any version of its missile arsenal at all. And now, 111 days later, with the deal signed, Trump is publicly defending Iran's right to retain some ballistic missile capability, and his own vice president is explaining that defense to the American press corps as though it were a victory. Senator Tom Cotton, one of the most hawkish Republicans on national security, has not yet commented publicly on this specific reversal, but the broader Republican reaction to the deal's nuclear and missile provisions has already been documented extensively on this channel. Senator Wicker called the deal a disaster. Senator Graham questioned why the war was fought at all. Mike Pompeo called it not remotely America first. And now, with Trump and Vance publicly defending Iran's right to keep missiles, the gap between what hawks in Trump's own party wanted from this war and what the signed deal actually delivers has become impossible to paper over with optimistic talking points. Now let us turn to what Vance said about Israel, because this is the most direct and public criticism any senior American official has leveled at the Israeli government during this entire conflict. During the same White House briefing, a reporter asked Vance about the clause in the U.S.-Iran agreement extending the ceasefire to Lebanon. Vance acknowledged he still expects some conflict between Israel and Hezbollah there, but said he hopes both sides abide by the deal. He said this is about regional peace, and what that means is we expect Hezbollah is not going to be firing rockets and firing drones at the Israelis. But then Vance went further than acknowledging expected friction. He directly criticized members of the Israeli government, distinguishing Netanyahu personally from his own cabinet. Vance said Netanyahu, to his credit, has not gone down this path, but he placed blame on members of Netanyahu's own cabinet. He said the problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump, and that anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in. That is the Vice President of the United States at the White House podium, publicly separating Netanyahu from his own government and telling members of that government by implication that they have their priorities backwards. He said Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. Think about the weight of that statement. The only head of state in the entire world, not most, not many, the only one. Vance is telling Israel's hardliners that they are isolating their own country internationally and that criticizing Trump, their last remaining sympathetic world leader, is suicidal for Israeli interests. Netanyahu, for his part, vowed publicly this week that Israeli forces will stay in southern Lebanon for as long as Israel's security needs require it. That is a direct statement of continued occupation, made in the same week that the United States signed a deal with Iran that includes Lebanon's territorial integrity and sovereignty as one of its 14 points. Netanyahu is not backing down from Lebanon. He is doubling down, and he is doing so while his own American patron's vice president is publicly criticizing his cabinet at the White House podium. The polling data on this rupture is now becoming visible in Israeli public opinion. According to reporting from the Times of Israel, most Israelis now feel that Prime Minister Netanyahu's conduct hurt Israel's interests in the U.S.-Iran agreement. The numbers mark a stark departure from the robust support Israel has typically shown for its own government during wartime. Israeli citizens themselves are beginning to conclude that their own prime minister's handling of this war damaged Israel's position rather than strengthened it. That is an extraordinary domestic political development inside Israel, and it adds yet another layer to the Trump-Netanyahu rupture that has been building since Trump called him crazy at the G7 summit just 2 days ago. Now let us bring in Iran's supreme leader, because his response to the signed deal this week reveals exactly how Tehran is framing this outcome to its own people, and it should give every American pause about how durable this peace actually is. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei issued a written statement approving the Memorandum of Understanding. He gave his official blessing. But within that same statement, he included language that every American needs to hear. He said that engaging in talks with the United States does not mean accepting its views. Read that carefully. Iran's supreme leader is telling his own people, in the same breath that he approves the deal, that approving the deal does not mean Iran accepts anything America believes or wants. He is framing Iranian participation in this peace process as tactical engagement, not capitulation, not alignment, not agreement with American values or American demands. He is preserving, in writing, for his own domestic audience, the position that Iran has not surrendered anything ideologically, even as it signs a document with the United States. That single sentence from Khamenei tells you more about the durability of this peace than almost anything else released this week. A leader who frames his own approval of a peace deal by simultaneously declaring that the deal does not mean accepting the other side's views is a leader keeping the door open for future confrontation. He is managing his domestic political position for the long term, not committing Iran to genuine reconciliation with the United States. Let us now connect this to Vance's other major statement from this week, the one delivered before Air Force Two, because it shows the other side of America's negotiating posture and reveals that the threat of force has not disappeared even as the deal has been signed. Vance told reporters that if the United States cannot cut a deal that ensures Iran does not have nuclear weapons, then there is another option on the table. He said the president is going to continue to preserve his options. He said America has a lot of options because we have the most powerful military in the world. He downplayed pushing pushes for regime change, saying any removal of the current Iranian government would be up to the Iranian people, not American policy. And he said the administration's only focus is preventing the current Iranian regime from obtaining a nuclear weapon. That statement, another option on the table, delivered by the Vice President of the United States in the same week. He is also defending Iran's right to keep some missiles and criticizing Israel's cabinet, shows you the full and complicated picture of where American policy actually stands. America signed a deal. America is defending parts of that deal publicly. And America is simultaneously keeping military force on the table as a fallback if the nuclear negotiations in the coming 60 days do not produce what Washington considers an acceptable outcome. Here is the full strategic picture as of tonight, June 19th, 2026, day 111 of this war. The Memorandum of Understanding has been signed by Trump, Vance, and an Iranian official. Trump and Vance are publicly defending Iran's right to retain some ballistic missile capability, framing the restriction only around missiles that could broadly threaten the entire world. Vance criticized members of Israel's own cabinet at the White House podium, distinguishing Netanyahu personally while blaming hardliners around him, and declared Trump the only sympathetic head of state to Israel in the entire world. Netanyahu vowed Israeli forces will remain in southern Lebanon for as long as security needs require it. Most Israelis now believe Netanyahu's conduct hurt Israel's interests in the deal, according to new polling. Khamenei approved the MOU in writing while explicitly stating that talks with America do not mean accepting its views. And Vance separately warned that another option remains on the table if the 60-day nuclear negotiations fail. America's World Cup czar called Iran's early entry into the United States for the World Cup a goodwill gesture, even as Iran's missile program, its support for Hezbollah, and its supreme leader's defiant framing of the peace deal all remain fully intact 111 days into this war. This is not the picture of two countries that fought a war and reached a clean resolution. This is the picture of an American president redefining victory in real time, an alliance with Israel fracturing in public at the highest levels of government, and an Iranian supreme leader carefully preserving his own ideological position even while accepting a deal that reopens his country's economy to the world. Every piece of this points to a peace that is fragile, contested, and built on foundations that could shift again at any moment. America, here is my question for you tonight. Trump is now publicly defending Iran's right to keep some ballistic missiles. His own vice president went to the White House podium this week and criticized Israel's own cabinet by name, telling them their real problem is not Donald Trump. Israel's own citizens are now telling pollsters that Netanyahu's conduct hurt their country's interests in this deal. And Iran's supreme leader approved the agreement in writing while declaring that talks with America do not mean accepting its views. After 111 days of war, after thousands of lives lost, after an American helicopter at the bottom of the Strait of Hormuz, here is what I want you to tell me right now. Has Trump redefined victory to fit the deal he was able to get, or did America genuinely achieve its original war goals? And do you believe the U.S.-Israel alliance can survive this very public rupture between Washington and Netanyahu's government? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This story is not over. It is entering its most uncertain phase yet.